In a world rushing with noise, the rarest gift we can offer is silence, sacred, attentive silence. Listening is not simply the act of hearing, it is the art of receiving. To listen with agape is to make room in the soul for another person's reality without judgment, agenda, or interruption. It is to say, your voice matters enough for me to quiet my own. In this way, listening becomes one of the most active and sacrificial forms of love. From the earliest moments of Genesis, God reveals himself as one who listens. When Cain cries out, "Am I my brother's keeper?" It is not just deflection, it is a denial of the call to attune. The blood of Abel cries out from the ground, and God hears, Genesis 4:10. The God of Israel is not deaf to injustice, suffering, or prayer. I have surely seen the affliction of my people. I have heard their cry, Exodus 3:7. Listening is God's first movement toward redemption. In the Psalms, this divine posture is echoed repeatedly. Incline your ear to me, rescue me speedily, Psalm 31:2. And again, the Lord is near to all who call on him in truth, Psalm 45:18. To love like God, we must become listeners. Saint Zélie Martin, mother of Saint Thérèse of Lisieux, quietly practiced the art of agape in listening. With a household of daughters, a business to run, and the weight of widowhood, she chose to hear each child's sorrows with full presence. Her letters reveal a woman who listened more than she spoke, who bore the moods and spiritual struggles of others with interior stillness. Saint Raphael Arnaiz Baron, a Spanish Trappist monk, said almost nothing during his final months on earth due to illness and obedience. But his journals disclose a man who listened to the silence within and discovered Christ there. His agape was not spoken, it was absorbed. Saint Joseph, silent throughout the Gospels, practiced the holiest listening of all. He does not speak a single word, and yet he responds perfectly to the voice of the angel. His obedience was born of deep listening. In his quiet guardianship, he models agape not as emotional display, but as attuned action. The Catechism reminds us that charity requires the practice of both justice and mercy, CC 2447. But how can we give either if we have not first heard the cry of the other? Without listening, mercy becomes patronizing and justice becomes blind. Listening is the beginning of both. In speaking about prayer, the Catechism says, listening to the Word of God is essential. It is a humble and receptive attitude, CCC 2654. This listening is not limited to sacred texts. It is also practiced toward the voice of a friend, a stranger, a child, or a suffering soul. Saint Seraphim of Sarov said, "Acquire a peaceful spirit, and thousands around you will be saved." Peace is the soil in which listening grows. To listen with agape is to fast from the need to be right, to correct, to defend. It is to relinquish control over how a conversation unfolds. Saint Paula Frassinetti, an Italian educator and founder of the Sisters of Saint Dorothy, once advised her sisters to listen not just to words, but to hearts. She believed that the spiritual life begins not in speaking beautifully, but in bearing the words of others without fear or retaliation. Listening is the opposite of domination. It is an act of hospitality. In the rule of Saint Benedict, the first word is listen. He knew that no monastic order could thrive if its members only waited for their turn to speak. Listening with agape is the invisible mortar between bricks of community. When Jesus meets the Samaritan woman at the well, he does not begin with instruction. He begins by asking for water. He draws her out, allows her to speak, reveals her wounds not through accusations, but through gentle revelation. She is transformed not by a lecture, but by being heard, and by realizing she is known. In Luke 24, on the road to Emmaus, Christ walks alongside the grieving disciples and listens to their pain. Only after listening does he open the scriptures to them, and only after breaking bread do they see. The power of Jesus was not just in his miracles, it was in his ability to make each person feel uniquely seen, heard, and restored. True listening requires death to self. It demands restraint of impulse, abandonment of control, and reverence for mystery. To listen is to stop rehearsing our next point. It is to cease viewing others as characters in our internal monologue. Saint Leopold Mandich, a Capuchin friar who spent over 12 hours a day hearing confessions, was nicknamed the Apostle of Listening. Though physically frail and often mocked for his appearance, he was spiritually towering. People waited hours just to be heard by him. He bore their secrets without flinching. It was said that he had the ears of Christ. In the stillness of the desert, the early Christian hermits became listeners to both God and their own brokenness. Saint Syncletica of Alexandria, a lesser-known desert mother, once said, "There are many who live in the mountains and behave like people in the town, and they are wasting their time. It is better to be a silent hermit in the heart than a noisy monk in the wilderness." Listening begins in the interior. In the chaos of urban life, listening becomes revolutionary. It interrupts the algorithms and artificial connections that numb us. When we put down our devices and look into a person's eyes, truly present, we are practicing sacred resistance. Defensiveness. When we listen only to refute, we hear nothing. Distraction. Love cannot dwell in divided attention. Projection. When we impose our own story over another's, we silence their truth. Fear. To hear someone's suffering requires courage, not solutions. To dismantle these barriers, we must surrender. Agape listening is not about achievement, it is about availability. You do not need a title to be a vessel of agape listening. You do not need to be a counselor or a theologian, a friend at a kitchen table, a neighbor on a walk, a stranger in line. All are moments where listening can become sacred. Every person you meet carries within them a depth you cannot see. Listening allows you to approach the infinite disguised in the ordinary. As St. Peter Faber, the lesser-known co-founder of the Jesuits, once said, "Seek God in all things, but especially in people. They are his loudest whisper." At the Annunciation, Mary listens. She asks one question, not in defiance, but in wonder. She surrenders to the Word, literally receiving it in her womb. Her fiat was not the product of impulsive obedience, but the fruit of attentive openness. Mary listened at the foot of the cross. She did not run, she did not scold, she remained, absorbing the suffering of her Son with a maternal silence that shattered heaven. In a noisy world, the listener becomes a prophet. To listen with agape is to say, "You are not alone. Your voice matters. I will carry this with you, not fix it, not fear it, not flee from it." The open ear is the prelude to the open heart. It is the language of those who know that to love is not to rescue, but to remain. In the end, agape listening is not measured by the words we speak afterward, but by the healing felt in the spaces we held. That is the power of divine love in silence.